In Lesson 5.4, you will be computing percents mentally. When you compute with common percents like 75% or 25%, it might be easier to use that fraction form of the percent. For example, on this number line, you'll see many common fraction and decimal equivalents. You may also want to copy some of these from this chart into your notes, especially this column, this second column. 33 1/3 and 66 2/3 are two common ones you should be familiar with. These ones would be nice to know, but not quite as useful as some of the others. And then over here, 10% will help you find any other multiple of 10. All right, example 1 says use fractions to compute mentally. Compute 20% of 45 mentally. Even though you're doing this in your head, I'm going to want you to be writing down what you are thinking of, so I know that you're not just taking a guess and that you're not using a calculator. 20% is 20 out of 100, or 1/5. So 1/5 of 45, if you want 1/5 of something, it means to divide it by 5. So 1/5 of 45 is equal to 9. So 20% of 45 is 9. So this is what I would like to see for your work. Show me what fraction you changed the percent to. Next example, 33 1/3% of 93 mentally. 33 1/3, if you looked at that chart or thought about it, 33 1/3 is the same as 1/3. 1/3 of 93 means to take 93 and divide it by 3. Well, 3 goes into 93 31 times. So 33 1/3% of 93 is 31. You may want to pause the video and try the next couple on your own. 25% of 32. 25% is 25 out of 100, or 1/4. 1/4 of 32 means to take 32 and divide it by 4. 32 divided by 4 is 8. 12 1/2%. This one isn't quite as common, but you do come across it quite a bit, so it wouldn't be bad to memorize this one as well. 12 1/2 or 12.5% is 1/8. 1/8 of 160 means to take 160 and divide it by 8. 160 divided by 8 is 20. Now 80% is 80 out of 100, or 4/5. 4/5 of 45. This one is a little bit trickier. You have to think of it in maybe 2 steps. If you want to figure out 4/5 of 45, you would first figure out what 1/5 of 45 is, and then multiply that answer by 4, since you want 4/5. So 1/5 of 45 is 45 divided by 5, which is 9. But I want 4 of them, since it's 4/5, so 9 times 4 is 36. You can also use decimals to compute mentally. For example, 10% is 1/10, or 0.1. And if you want to do that 0.1 or 1/10 of 98, if you take 98 and multiply it by 0.1, you're still going to have the 98, but the decimal is going to be moved one place to the left. It's going to be 9.8. For 1%, 1% is 1/100th. If you take 1/100th and multiply it by 235, you're still going to have a 2, a 3, and a 5, But this time in your answer, you're going to move the decimal 2 places over. So it's 2 and 35 hundredths. If you have trouble thinking about which way to move it, you could also think of this as a fraction. 10% is 1/10, and we've talked a lot about how if you divide by 10, you move the decimal 1 place to the left. And 1% is 1/100th, and you would divide by 100, which means you'd move the decimal 2 places to the left. You may want to pause the video and try the next couple on your own. 10% of 65. This is one that I'm very familiar with. Back from my days of working at Target, I got a 10% discount, and I could quickly calculate that in my head by taking the decimal and moving it 1 place to the left. So 10% of 65 is 6.5 or 6 and 5/10. 1% of 450 is 1/100th, or divide by 100, which means to move the decimal 2 places to the left. Now 3% of 22 is one of those two-step problems because you would first figure out 1%. 1% of 22. 1% of 22 is 1/100th, or dividing by 100. So 1% of 22 is 0 and 22 hundredths. But since we want 3%, we're going to take that answer and multiply it by 3. So if I multiply by 3, I get 0 and 66 hundredths. The last example, the Weston Middle School Cougars won 80% of their baseball games this year. There were 35 games. How many games did the Cougars win? Well, 80% as a fraction is 4/5. So you could figure out 4/5 of 35 games. 4/5 of 35 is going to require 2 steps. Let's first figure out what 1/5 is. 1/5 of 35 means to do 35 divided by 5, which is 7. But then I want 4 of them. So 7 times 4 is 28. So they won 28 games. Last example, you may want to try that one on your own. Alan and his brother ate lunch at the local cafe. They left a tip that was 20% of the bill. If the bill was $15.50, how much did Alan and his brother leave for the tip? Well, 20% is 20 out of 100, or 1/5. 1/5 of the bill, and the bill was $15.50, so 1/5 of $15.50. Take $15.50 and divide it by 5, that's actually easy to do in your head because 5 goes into 15 3 times, and 5 goes into the 50 cents 10 times. So $3.10 is how much they would have left for a tip.